What's contained in the article, Mr. President, Your Honor, is not a leak. Tsismis yun.
Kahit chismis yan or gossip yan, walang problema sa akin yan. Ang problema, bakit o paano lumabas sa isang media outlet yung mga nag-transpire sa ating usapin kahapon.
Ang sabi doon na against ako sa restoration ng CF ng Office of the Vice President. Tama yun, pero kulang.
Paano masabi?
So, Majority Floor Leader,
Yes, Mr. President. Before I give my statement, Mr. President, which I actually agree with your manifestation and the statements made by our dear colleague Senator Jinggoy Estrada. Senator Chis Escudero is seeking the floor to clarify something, Mr. President.
yes, Senator
may I-
Escudero is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I agree 100% with what Senator Jinggoy Estrada said, that the account is not accurate and that is not what transpired in executive session. I hope, Senator Jinggoy, you and I will not be sanctioned for saying part of what happened, as you said. It was the unanimous consensus of the members of the Senate in executive session. So this is not the facts contained in the article, Mr. President, Your Honor, is not a leak. Tsismis yun. So there is no leak to speak of really with respect to what truly transpired in the executive session. An attempt perhaps to create a story about it, but I confirm the statement of the good Senate President and the Senator Jinggoy that it was the unanimous position of the House, what Senator Angara will be sponsoring today and the other vice chairpersons. That was the unanimous position of the Senate and all the members of the Senate.
Thank you, Senator Escudero. But before we ask our colleague to react, Senator Estrada, may we ask the Majority Floor Leader, what are the rules, particularly in executive session?
Yes, Mr. President.
So we are all clear.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, first of all, let me state and put into the records that I'm aghast of what happened, Mr. President. Whether this is leak or pure chismis, the fact that it came out, Mr. President, and it appears blow by blow, and unfortunately, Mr. President, the figures, the numbers, even the names that were mentioned were disoriented, Mr. President. I would just like to put into the record of this chamber, Mr. President, what our rules say about executive session. What's this? Rule on section 126 of our rules, Mr. President. Mr. President, section 129 of our rules, Mr. President, it states here, and I quote, any senator who violates the provisions contained in the preceding section may, by a two-thirds vote of all the senators, be expelled from the Senate. And if the violator is an official or employee of the Senate, he shall be dismissed. I'd like to put that on record, Mr. President, because at the end of the day, it's not just the leak or chismis that we're talking about here, and I agree with Senator Jinggoy Estrada being one of our veteran senator here in the Senate, Mr. President. It's more of the sanctity. It's more of the sanctity of the executive session. We continue to perform our duties and responsibilities here in the Senate. During committee hearings of Senator Bato, he would call for executive session. Paano ho tayong pagtitiwalaan ng mga nasa executive? Paano tayong pagtitiwalaan ng taong bayan kung ang ating executive session ay nangyayari po yung mga ganitong pangyayari, Mr. President. And so again, Mr. President, let me
May I add, Majority Floor Leader, Section 28, the preceding section, is very important. The President, as well as the senators and officials and employees of the Senate, shall absolutely refrain from divulging any of the confidential matters taken up by the Senate, and all proceedings which might have taken place in the Senate in connection with the said matters shall be likewise considered as strictly confidential until the Senate by 2/3 vote of all its members, decides to lift the ban of secrecy.
Thank
So
you,
ganun
Mr.
katindi yung
Very
rules
clear.
natin.
Very clear, Mr. President. Crystal clear, Mr. President. Mr. President, Senator Jinggoy is seeking the floor. Move that
Yes,
to be
Senator
recognized.
Estrada.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to associate myself with the comments made by the Majority Leader. Kahit chismis yan or gossip yan, walang problema sa akin yan. Ang problema, bakit o paano lumabas sa isang media outlet yung mga nag-transpire sa ating usapin kahapon.
Yes.
That is, for me, that is the most important thing. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Senator,
Seeking the
maybe
floor,
we can
Mr.
give the Minority Floor Leader first if you don't mind, Senator.
Yes, Mr.
Duros.
President. The Minority Leader, Mr.
Thank you,
President.
Mr. President. Ako nga, ngayon ko lang po nabasa, disappointed nga ako sa report eh. Kasi, ang sabi doon na against ako sa restoration ng CF ng Office of the Vice President. Tama yun, pero kulang. Kasi kahapon ako sinasabi ko, tanggalin din ang intelligence fund ng Office of the President. So kulang yung report, ipakidagdag sa report. Kasi the Office of the President is is a civilian office, not an armed agency, and not a uniformed agency. So kulang po, pakidagdag na lang.
You're not violating the rules because you're divulging your own position. Yes. And Senator Lauren Legarda as well.
Senator Lauren also is here.
Mr. President, if I may, with the permission of my colleagues, may I request that we discuss this in caucus now? Because by saying what is true or untrue in the reported publication online, we are speaking about the executive session. And let me just remind the body of Section 129 of the Rules of the Senate. It is not even a matter of whether it's published online or hard copy. The mere divulging the executive session minutes or any part of it who violates all the provisions in the executive session contained in the preceding sections by 2/3 vote may be expelled from the Senate. It is a very serious violation, Mr. President, by a senator or an officer or a staff. In Rule, what is this?
129.
Yes, 129.
Section 129.
So, by saying that it is not true, or it is true in part, but in fact it is this and that, we are actually talking about the executive session. So it is my humble opinion, respectfully, I do not want to muzzle our colleagues, and if they want to speak on the floor, I leave it to your better judgment. But many of us feel strongly about this, and I respect the right of Senator Estrada for standing on the floor. But if we are going to speak about each and every line which was published, whether it is true or not, with all due respect to the publication which I've not read, may we discuss it in caucus in relation to 129 rule of the Senate. That is my humble suggestion. But I leave it to the members of the Senate if they want to speak about it in session. Thank you, Mr.
Yes.
President.
We understand that many of our colleagues feel slighted, feel angry, and we could allow them to express their personal opinions and release their emotions to this chamber. Yes, Senator Pia Cayetano's recognized.
Thank you. Mr. President, let me align myself with the observation and recommendation of the Senate President Pro Temp. I did not stand, I did not raise my hand with the intention of clearing any statement I made. I did not even read that. I don't bother reading those kind of articles. I don't. So, nung nabanggit pa yung pangalan ko, nagugulat lang ako kasi I don't bother reading those articles and I won't comment on it. What I will say is this. I will say it not because I'm repeating what I said in caucus, because I agree with Senate President Pro Temp that let's discuss it there. Because if even our rules do not even make an exception. It does not even allow a senator to say, I will just repeat what I said. Walang ganun exception, Majority Floor Leader, correct? So I cannot stand up here and said, I will just be responsible for my statement. Ito po yung sinabi ko. Hindi tayo allowed, walang exception sa rules natin na tumayo ang isang senador at sabihin, yung akin pong sinabi doon, ito. Kasi hindi naman magkaroon ng opportunity yung ibang 23 senators to explain what they said or what they thought. Because precisely the rule is lahat tayo tahimik. At kaya ang parusa doon, yung pinakamabigat na parusa na expulsion from the Senate. So, ang puntos ko ay simple. Chairman ako ng isang mahalagang committee na naghihiring ng budget na yan. DepEd, CHED, DOH, and attached agencies. So, on the issue of confidential funds, intelligence funds, or kung ano paman, ako gusto ko tanungin ng mga senador sa floor, yung mga tanong nila tungkol doon para makapagdesisyon ang bawat senador kung ano ang tingin niyang nararapat na gawin sa mga pondong yan. Confidential, non-confidential, anything. So, yun yung gusto kong klase na diskusyon. So, kung nagkaroon tayo ng executive session na napag-usapan man ng ganon, hindi nga dapat lumalabas yon kasi nga, ang mga subcommittee chairman na katulad ko ay magre-recommend sa chairman na si Senator Angara kung ano dapat gawin sa mga pondong yon. Hindi ko naman didesisyonan mag-isa yon. Didesisyonan ko yon based on the debates. I would like to be educated properly based on the rules of the Senate. Gusto ko marinig yung posisyon ng Minority Floor Leader, ng Deputy Minority Floor Leader, ng Senate President, ng Senate President Pro Temp, ng mga baguhan na Senator. Gusto ko marinig lahat yon. Ano ang paniwala nyo tungkol dito sa mga iba-ibang pondo and what will we do about it? Tapos, iharap natin sa taong bayan kung ano desisyon natin. So kaya nga, and I'm explaining this because the students, the young people, the old people who will now care to comment, bakit ba may executive session? Bakit ba kayo nagsisikreto? Wala naman kaming balak isikreto. Ilalabas nga yun. Pero minsan may mga diskusyon na gusto natin marinig yung opinion ng bawat isa na walang titigil nung, kunyari gusto kong magtanong ng, it's a stupid question. Pero tatanungin ko na, di ako mahihiya. Diba? Aminin natin, minsan nahihiya tayong magtanong dahil kasi bago lang ako, di kaya kami executive session para lahat pwedeng maitanong, lahat pwedeng mailabas. Kaya dapat sikreto yun. And then at the right time, mapapag-usapan. I wanted to explain that lang, Mr. President, for the benefit of those watching us. Kasi ang puntos is, bakit kayo may executive session? Bakit kayo may tinatago? Wala akong tinatago. Nagdidiskusyon ng maayos para bang magulang. Let's say, for example, na wala itong nangyaring ganito sisermo na ni Senate President o kaya ni Senate President Pro Temp ako, sisermo na nila ako. They will do that in private. In the executive session, ay Pia, di mo naintindihan. So gagawin namin yun in private para pagdating to sa public, ganun ba? O sige, tatanungin ko na lang in public o kaya di ko na tatanungin dahil naipaliwanag nyo na. That's the reason among many other reasons kung bakit may executive session. I just wanted to explain that dahil ang puntos nito is bakit may executive session at bakit may mabigat na kaparusahan. Wala tayong tinatago. But the reason for the rules is because it is meant to be followed. It is not meant to be violated. So kung may nag-violate, magkaroon ng tamang due process, magkaroon ng hearing, magkaroon ng opportunity to explain, and then the proper penalty must be meted out. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator Cayetano. Senator Gatchalian is recognized.
Mr. President, I just want to add from what Senator Bato mentioned and Senator Cayetano mentioned as well. The broader implication of this, Mr. President, is the trust and confidence to the Senate. It's our credibility on the line. And every budget hearing, normally, a lot of the security cluster, the National Defense, the Department of National Defense, the PNP, the NICA, all of them normally will request executive session so they can tell us what is the reality, the national security situation, national security matters, so that we can act accordingly. Leaks like this will hamper, will destroy our credibility, destroy our integrity, and it will now prevent the security agencies to give us the truth because they will have doubts in their minds whether the truth information will be kept safe in the halls of the Senate. So, Mr. President, I would like to associate myself with the motion of Senator Bato that this should be looked at and investigated seriously because it's the Senate's credibility on the line especially whenever departments request for executive sessions and whenever they divulge to us matters of national security. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. And that's why we had a meeting earlier with the leadership, because we cannot take this lightly. And we have to investigate and make sure this does not happen again.